Alright, and now we need to create a chair in this area. Now we might need to experiment a little bit because I'm leaning towards gaming chair and then also some sort of office chair, but we're going to see how it turns out. So let's press Shift C so that the cursor is centered, and let's add a plane. Move it above the ground, and we're going to scale it down. Let's go to the top view, and let's move it closer to this area so that we have a little bit better idea on how it's going to turn out. Now tap into edit mode and add a loop cut in the center, and then select these two vertex points and then delete them. We're going to use mirror modifier so that we just model one side and the other one will be taken care of. So let's add a mirror modifier, enable clipping and set y-axis. And now we're going to go ahead and rotate this along the y-axis 90 degrees. Let's move it up. Let's move it up along z-axis even more. I think it's a little too thick on the y-axis, so we're going to make it a bit thinner. Okay, now let's add 2 loop cuts on this side and 3 loop cuts on this side. Now, you can also do what I like to do is call it iterative changes. So what I do often is that I create a copy of the object that I'm working with, and then I move it out of the way. So now I can start working on this, and if I mess up something or the thing that I'm trying to sort of experiment with doesn't turn out to be good, then I can just take that back instead of starting from scratch. So we're going to start working on this one. So let's go ahead and add a solidify modifier, and we're going to move it to the back side so that it's easier to work with these points from the front side. And we're going to also add a subdiv modifier. Let's shear it smooth, and now we just need to play around with the shape. So let's select these 2 vertices, move it to the top, select this one and add a bit more roundness. Same thing with this one, so we're sort of creating a rounder shape. Whoops, okay, so I accidentally pressed Z, and go to solid shading view. Let's select all of these vertex points and move them down since the chair is becoming too long. Let's select these 2 vertex points, enable our proportional editing and set our fall off to smooth, and move it on the x-axis to give it a bit more curve like that. With proportional editing, let's just start tweaking this a little bit. We're going to move this one up slightly like that. Okay, I think I like the shape, and then since we have solidify modifier, the thickness is going to be non-destructive. And let's tap into edit mode. In the edge selection mode, we're going to select this edge, control click here so that it selects the shortest path, and we're going to just hold down control and click on some of these vertices a few more times. And then we're going to press Shift D to duplicate and separate that by selection. Now with that new object that we just duplicated, we're going to turn off the viewport for the solidify modifier so that we can see it a little bit better. Tap into edit mode, select everything and add a bit of extrusion, and then we're going to scale it down like that. So this basically sort of added that extrusion, and now we can enable our solidify modifier and shear it smooth. So this is going to give us this outer ring. And now we can go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad. So we have this object in the way. Let's press H to hide it and select this shape. And in the X-ray mode, we can use the vertex selection mode to select some of these vertices here and move them slightly. Let's make sure to turn off the proportional editing, just to sort of round off this area a little bit. And let's move it a little on the x-axis so that it's easier to work with it. Okay, so there we have it. So this is sort of one back style, and if we go down here, we need to do a bit of organization in this area. So we're going to unhide by clicking on this eye icon for the second piece. Now if you want to create more of a gaming chair, then what you can do is move sort of these points up a little bit like that. And then we're going to sort of apply the same modifier. So let's add a solidify modifier to the backside like that. Add a subdiv modifier and then shade it smooth. And now you just need to play around with these vertices. So let's grab them along the x-axis to give it a bit of a rounder shape down there. And select these 2 points and grab them along the x-axis and then just move them slightly on the y-axis like that. And to pronounce this crease a little more, you can add a loop cut in this area like that, and it's going to give you a more pronounced cut there. And let's select these 2 points, enable proportional editing, and increase the fall off area and give it a bit of a cut like that. And then you can play around with the solidify modifier. So now you can see that we have 2 different backs. So this can be used for a gaming chair, and for the bottom part it's going to be mostly same, just minor tweaks. But we're going to move it out of the way for now, and if we need to we can sort of attach and create 2 chairs, and then we can hide one and make 2 renders out of it, one with the office chair, one with the gaming chair. Okay, so let's go ahead and add another plane object, and we're going to move it up, and then we can scale it down. Make sure to turn off this proportional editing. I keep forgetting about it for some reason. Let's go to the top view and then move this object on the y-axis so that it's centered on this, and then we can just scale it down. Let's move it out like that, a little on this sort of bottom side, and then we can go ahead and add an extrusion. Add 2 loop cuts this way, 2 loop cuts this way, and maybe 1 loop cut to the bottom side like that. And then add a subdiv modifier and shade it smooth. Let's go ahead and add a bit more thickness on the z-axis. Enable X-ray mode, and using the vertex selection mode, select these back vertices. And then we can go ahead and move these on the x-axis to give it a bit of a shape towards that side. And you can select some of these vertices with proportional editing and start adding sort of bumps and those kinds of things a little bit to like that. And let's create a copy of this and move it down. Select everything and scale it on the z-axis to create a sort of a bottom plate. And we're going to scale it just a tiny bit down. Okay. And then we're going to also create this for the gaming chair, but in just a second. Let's create the base first. So shift right click here and then add a circle with about 10 sides. And let's scale it down and make sure to turn off proportional editing. Move it out of the ground and scale it even more. And then we can go ahead and extrude it out like this. Actually, I didn't fill it, so let's fill it first and then extrude it out again. Insert, extrude out, insert again, and then extrude out one more time. Okay, let's just sort of eyeball. I think this bottom part is a little too big. So let's go into X-ray mode, so let's just make it a bit tinier. Shade it smooth, add a subdiv modifier, and then we might need to add some controlling loops. So let's just add a few of these controlling loop cuts. And let's add a plane object. Tap into edit mode and scale it down. Move it above the ground on the x-axis. And we're going to scale it on the y-axis like that. Select these 2 points and just grab and play around with the scale until you're sort of happy with it. And then we're going to sort of extrude it out like that. Select this face and scale it down. And then move it down on the z-axis to give it a bit of curve. Also, let's just add a tiny bit curve here by using this loop cut. And let's add a subdiv modifier, shade it smooth, and then we need to add some supporting loops. Let's bevel this loop cut and add a loop cut towards the end there, and maybe 1 loop cut around this area. Now for rotating this around, we can use a technique using the array modifier that's going to make it much easier. So first we're going to select this base object and tap into edit mode. Let's enter into the isolation mode so that it's easier to select this bottom face. And then we're going to press Shift S to open this pie menu. And then we're going to move cursor to selected. That's going to snap our 3D cursor to this face. And then we can go ahead and tap out of the edit mode, right click and set, actually we have to end the isolation mode. And now we need to select this part of the chair and then right click, set origin to 3D cursor. That's going to move the origin point to that 3D cursor there. And we can then shift A to add menu. And let's add a empty object. So this empty object is just going to be used for controlling. And now we can select our chair and we need to add an array modifier. So I'm going to use the quick menu and add an array modifier. Let's turn off the relative offset, increase the number of copies to about 5, enable this object offset and expand its settings. And then for the object, we're going to use this empty. Now what we can do is select this empty object and press R to rotate along the Z-axis, and you can see that it's going to give us a very easy way to rotate these. And now the good thing about this is that it's non-destructive, so if we make change to the chair, you can see how it's going to apply to all of the parts of the chair. And let's just move this slightly on the x-axis like that. So it's pretty non-destructive this way, and at any given time we can sort of rotate this, and we can also increase the number of copies using the array modifier, so it's going to add more and more. We're going to adjust the scale a little later. Let's go ahead and add a circle and rotate this along the x-axis 90 degrees, and then go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad, and then we can scale it down like that. And let's grab and move it to the side here. And let's select this base part and this empty and move it above the ground so that it's easier to see the wheel. Again, I'm gonna go to the front view, scale it down a little more. We can adjust the origin point. So when we move object in the edit mode, it just keeps the origin point in the previous location, so that sort of messes up a little bit. Okay, now in the edit mode, we're going to fill it up, add an extrusion, and select everything, and then just align it under this area. Okay, I think I like the shape. Let's add a loop cut and then bevel that. Now in the edge selection mode, we're going to select these 2 loop cuts and then bevel them. And now we can extrude these along the faces normal like that. Let's add a subdiv modifier and shade this object smooth. And if we want, we can sort of add a bit of inset on these 2 faces, and maybe let's add an extrusion and then scale it along the y-axis. And then let's add one more inset so that it can keep its shape. Now we're going to go ahead and click on this face, control click up here so that we're sort of selecting the shortest path, and control click here, shift D to duplicate and separate by selection, and then select everything and extrude faces along normals to give it a bit more depth. And then we can add 1 loop cut here, select everything, scale along the y-axis like that. Now if you want, you can add a loop cut here, and that's going to sort of fix this roundness, but I like this, so I'm going to keep it. And finally, we can select this loop cut at the top and bevel it just a tiny bit. And then we have this sort of face here, and that we can extrude up. And then let's switch to X-ray mode and add a supporting loop cut like that. And we might need to add one down here. Let's go ahead and select the wheel, parent it to the handle part, and then we're gonna go to the top view. Actually, we have to make sure that wheel and this top part is selected. That's gonna go to the top view, and then we just need to create more copies of this. Now we can enable X-ray mode so that we can see it more better, and we're going to use link duplicates. That's going to give us control so that we can change the rotation of the object in the object mode, but at the same time, if we make any change in the edit mode, that's going to apply over to all copies. So Shift D to Alt D to copy or create a linked duplicate, and we're going to place it like that, and then again Alt D, and now we can just sort of rotate this if we need to and adjust the positioning a little bit. Alt D again, place it there, add random rotation, Alt D, and place it there, add some random rotation. Okay, and now we can go ahead and select all of these top parts of the wheels and select this base part, and then that's going to be connected to that, and then we can parent that together. So now what happens is that if we select this base part and move it around, it should be able to, actually I forgot about this empty, so make sure to parent that as well. And now if we select this base part and then move it, you can see everything moves together and we can sort of scale it together. So we're going to scale it down a little bit. And let's go ahead and select our chair and its parts and parent everything to this cushion. And then select this base part and parent that to the cushion as well. But first let's adjust the positioning so we can place it. Let's go to the front view so that it's easier. Let's go to the side view and move it along the y-axis like that. Okay, I think I like the size and everything. We can make minor tweaks if we need to. For the most part, it's completed. Let's select this base part and parent this to the cushion. So Control P and parent to the object. And now we can work on the second chair. Let's move it closer to this. So I'm going to move it to the very similar sort of area. I think it's a little too small for our liking, so select and scale scale it up just a tiny bit on the y-axis like that. And let's go ahead and move it on the x-axis back there. Let's go ahead and select this base and then hold on shift and click on the right bracket, and it's going to select all of the children objects, and shift D to duplicate and move it along the x-axis like that. And now we're going to go ahead and clear the parents from this top object. So Alt P and then clear parents and keep transform. So now it's sort of its own separate object. Let's go ahead and select both of these and move them on the x-axis. And now we're going to create the base parts. So let's go ahead and shift click here and add a plane object. Move it above the ground like that. Tap into edit mode and scale it down. Let's adjust the position a little bit. Okay, move it on the x-axis like that. Set the origin to the center of the object. Tap into edit mode, add an extrusion like that. Add subdiv modifier, shade it smooth, and then add an edge loop like that. Let's add some controlling loop cuts. So we're going to bevel these and then add a loop cut this way and bevel it as well. Let's add 2 more loop cuts this way. And let's add 2 more loop cuts this way. And let's select this sort of area of the object, duplicate that and separate from selection. Select both cushions and move them down a little bit. Okay, and now with this one, we're going to add a solidify modifier and center the origin point. Move it on the y-axis like that, and we're going to play around with the solidify modifier a little bit. So move it like that. And now let's go to the front view so that it's easier to work with this. And then using the vertex selection mode, we're going to select these top vertices and start sort of moving these a little bit up to give it more of a shape that we want. Select these and move it slightly on the x-axis like that. We might need to move the solidify above the subdivision so that it fixes this shading issue that we have here. And let's move it closer to the cushion now. Let's add a mirror modifier and set the cushion as a mirror object, and make sure to enable the y-axis and not the x. And then we're gonna hide this object and then select this base again. Let's select these faces again and duplicate it and separate by selection. Now we're going to move it up like that And let's select everything and scale it on the x-axis to make it smaller. And then go back to the side view, select these two vertex points, enable proportional editing, and move it up to give it more of a curve like that. And move it down, center the origin point. And let's add the solidify modifier and move it above the subdivision modifier. And then we can play around with the thickness. I think I'm happy with the way it looks. Let's go ahead and select this part, and actually let's add a mirror modifier so that we don't have to add it again. And for the y-axis, and set the cushion. And then we're going to select the center face, duplicate it, and separate by selection. And let's hide it and select that new object that we created. Select this bottom edge and turn off the proportional editing, and then drag it on the z-axis like that. And add a loop cut and then bevel it so that we have more control over the shape. And now we can go ahead and press Alt H, and it's going to unhide everything. Let's move the shape a tiny bit down, and we might need to change the solidification just a tiny bit, and then move it on the y-axis like that. Select both objects and move them on the y-axis like that again. And if you want to change the thickness of this top part, you just need to select these vertices and move them on the z-axis slightly like that. Now you can keep this in one shape, or you can, if you want to, you can add like a loop cut and then move it out. And then if you extrude this part down, it's going to be a little thinner. So if we extrude it, you can see it's going to be thinner, but I like the shape, so I'm going to Control Z that. And plus period on the numpad to zoom in on this object. Now you can see that if we extrude it, it's going to have a bit of weird effect. To fix that, we need to apply the solidify modifier, so make sure that you're happy with the thickness. Now you can change it after it, but it's going to be a bit annoying to do that. So we're going to apply the solidification, and now we can just select this face here and extrude it towards the inside. I'm going to press period again on the numpad so to recenter that. Let's go to the X-ray mode and select these points and move them down slightly like that. So we're sort of adjusting this, and we need to add some supporting loop cuts. And finally, we can select this cushion and select these two front vertices, enable proportional editing, and move it along the z-axis a little bit. Actually, let's select everything and scale it on the z-axis a tiny bit so that is a little more thicker actually. And let's go ahead and enable X-ray mode, turn off this proportional editing for now, and select some of these vertex points. Enable proportional editing and start moving this on the y-axis slightly to move it inwards. And we might need to do same thing on the other side. So it's a bit of back and forth process because we're sort of going for this stylized look, and we need to sort of tweak some of the shapes and stuff. We can do same thing for this shape, but since it has mirror modifier, we just need to do it for one side, and the rest of it will be taken care of. Let's just sort of move it inwards like that. Let's go ahead and select some of these points. So we're just sort of basically just tweaking the shape a little bit to our liking. Okay, and finally we're going to select the cushion front part and maybe select these 2 points and these two, and just start moving them, moving these to give it a bit of bump on the front side. Let's go ahead and select these 2 points and move it down a little bit. And maybe add a little bit of bump on the back side here. Now, if you want, you can sort of expand the size of this to hide that part on the inside, but I like it the other way. And you can also sort of create a basic cover using the same technique if you want to, but I like the look of it so far. So now we have 2 chairs, and now depending on which one you like more, you can keep that one in your scene. Also, let's just create a quick handle test in this area. So Shift D to duplicate and separate that by selection. move it up like that, and we're gonna scale it. I don't know why I keep forgetting this. And I think I'm gonna just extrude it so that I can get a bit better idea on how it's gonna look up. Select everything and scale it up on the Z-axis just a tiny bit. And then in the X-ray mode, we're gonna select this, enable the proportional editing, and give it a bit of curve. Now move it down. Okay, I'm not sure if this is what I want, but I wanted to sort of give it a bit of try. So we're gonna keep it there anyways. Let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier. Set that cushion as the mirror object for the y-axis. And we can decide on if we need these handles or not. So now we have these two chairs, and finally we need to sort of adjust this a little bit. So let's go ahead and select all of these parts and parent them to the cushion. So Control P, parent, and then we're gonna adjust it from the side view so that it just sort of sits on that area. Let's go to the right view, and it's already centered there. And we can select the base and parent that to the cushion. And now just click on this cushion and you can move it around. So we're gonna, for now, I'm gonna move this gaming chair out of the way and put it onto the sort of side area. So grab it on the ground and put it here. And then when we're doing our organization and stuff, and then we can sort of hide and create collections and more, all of that stuff. Now, I usually like to just rename stuff as I'm doing that, but in this case, I wanted to just keep it unorganized so that we can go over how I sort of organize the things. So there we have it. We have the chair completed, actually 2 chairs completed. And now we can go ahead and save our file.